In this video I'm going to show you how to model a curved truss similar to the one that we've got right here that I've modeled. And to start this process I created a mass model of a building shape that I wanted to use. You need to know what it is you want to model before you start, of course. And then I set in a series of grid lines that would represent the kind of major structural components. There might be others internally, but these are good references that you'll need as you go to draw it. And then I created a curved grid line to represent the where the truss was going to be. And let's see here, just in case you don't know how to do a curved grid line, I'm just going to go in here and show you the procedure. Architecture, and then you go into grids, and then you could use a multi-segment grid, and then you can use the arcs. I recommend you use arcs for grid lines and not splines, because it's easier for, first of all, for construction purposes if there's a radius associated with the line. And so anyway, and then the other thing that I did, okay, I'm going to get out of that, as I'll open up a north elevation here. And so the other thing that I did was create a series of levels to represent the bottom of the truss. Okay, so this is a line that is the bottom of the truss, and there's a line, a level that is the top of the truss. And those will become very useful as we go to attempt to model it. And there's always good to have grids and or levels as references as you go to about a model. And you can always delete these or hide them if you don't want them in your drawings later. So we'll just minimize that. And so let's build this truss for this side right over here. And so the first thing that we're going to do is create a series of reference lines. Okay, because reference lines, first of all, they're great to have, and they make the modeling a lot easier. And to do that, I'm going to this is actually the that's a reflective ceiling plane. I don't want that. Let's close this, close that, close this, and let's open up the floor plan to the we can start with the bottom of the truss. Okay, so this is the bottom of the truss, and I'm going to create a series of reference lines. So I'm going to create one at the bottom of the truss, and to do that I'm going to go into create a mass component, an in-place mass, and close that. And this I'm going to call curved truss, and I already have one in here, the one I just showed you, so I'm going to call this curved truss 2. And so we're going to go into create a reference line, and we're going to use the pick command here to select the grid line. So if we go down here and we select this line, there's select that line. Now we have 2 reference lines, and you can see them over here in the 3D view at the bottom of the truss. Now I'm going to change views, so I'll just close that one out and open up bottom. Oh, that was the bottom of the truss. Let's open up top of truss, and we'll WT this. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to create a series of reference lines at the top of the truss. So with that open, I'm going to go reference, and it's asking what plane I want to work off of, and so I'm going to go to the top of the truss. Okay, and you can see the reference line showing up here, or the reference plane, and reference, and then pick, and I'll just do it similar thing again here. Okay. Now we have 2 reference lines. One's the bottom of the truss and one's the top of the truss. And so now that I have my reference lines, I'm going to put the for the chords, the top and bottom chords, I'm going to do a sweep along that line, using it as the path to create a the top and bottom chords. And to do that, you'll see that I need to set the reference plane for drawing the profile to the end of that reference line. And so I'm going to go set, and I'm going to move it right in here, and if I tab, that reference plane is going to come up. And now if anything that I draw is going to be on that reference plane. Okay, and so now I can zoom in and do a profile there. So I'm just going to do that real quick, and let's go in. And to do this, I want the top of the chord to be on top on that line right there. So I'm just going to draw a line out right here and draw one perpendicular 90 degrees out. And then I'm going to offset that. So I'll go into offset here, and I'm going to offset that 5 inches, which is already set, and also copy it. So now I've got the top and bottom. Now I need the width, which I'm going to make 3 inches. So I'm going to make it 3 inches or on each side. I want it centered, so I'm going to draw a line right here and use that line then to do another set of offsets. Offset. And you'll see that line right there. I don't want to do it 5 inches though. I just want to do it 1.5 inches. And so I'm going to go that side and then that side. And it should be 3 by 5 now. And I'm going to use my trim tool here and trim those lines up. Notice I select the side of the line that I want to keep. And of course I don't want to keep that line right there. So I'm going to select it and delete it. Now I've got a path and I've got a profile. So I'm going to select the path and I'm going to come in, hold the control key down, and select the profile. And now that I have a profile and a path, I can just say create a form. And Revit is kind of smart enough that it looks at those two elements and says, well, what can I do with it? Can I do a sweep? Can I do an extrusion or whatever? And so it'll assume that it was an extrusion. If there's multiple things it can do with it, it'll come back to you and say, hey, you can sweep this, or you can extrude it, or whatever. Now that we have that, I'm going to do my bottom and basically repeat the same procedure. So I'm going to go back in, set my profile line or my profile pane, tab, 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 tab. There we go. And so now I have that line. Draw a line there, draw a line down here, do an offset, 1.5, 1.5, change my offset to 5. Shouldn't have deleted both of those lines. Undo it. There we go. And so I'm going to trim it up. And trim, 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 and trim. Once again, select the reference line, hold the control key down, select the profile, and say create a form. And now I've got the top and bottom chord. So now I'm ready to create a curved surface between this top and bottom chord to create the webbing that I want to use. And to do that, I'm going to create a reference line in the center here, and then another reference line in the center here, and then make a surface out of that. So I'm going to use the set command to set this as the drawing plane, since I want a reference line on that. And then I'm going to go into reference and use a pick and just pick the one above it to mirror there, and then do the same thing down here on the bottom. So pick that as a surface, reference, pick, and now we have two reference lines, and I could of course lock those to the chords So if the chords move, they would move with it, which probably wouldn't be a bad idea. And then I'm going to select that chord and control and select that chord, or reference line, I'm sorry, on the chord. And I'm going to click create form, and it's going to create me a surface. And that surface, now what I want to do is divide that into a triangular shape. So if I select that surface and I go into divide surface, okay, so, and then I'm going to divide the surface. It has no pattern set right now, but I'm going to divide it by what is called a bent triangle. Okay, since the surface is not flat, it's actually bent. And then I want the U value, the distance between those, to be the distance between those two chords. So a fixed distance, and 10 inches from 36 inches, of course, is 26 inches. Whoops. Click back on in here, 26 inches. And then fixed number, I'm going to shoot it around 30 and apply that. And so now we have our chords, or where our webbing is going to be. But it's not a solid, it's just a pattern right now. And I'm going to use that pattern to then create geometry. To create the webbing geometry here, we're going to create a new family and use a new family type. So I'm going to go in here to New Family, and I'm going to come down here and scroll down into Generic Models, and I'm going to use what is called a pattern based. Since we're using a pattern here, I'm going to use a pattern based model. There you go, generic model pattern based, and I'm going to open that up. This is going to be a family that I'm going to apply to that pattern, and you'll see that it defaults to a rectangle, but of course that's not what I want. So I'm going to click on the grid here and go down the triangle bent. So now I've got the triangle bent up here, and the webbing that I want is from here to here, right? This is the chord that's already modeled. So I'm just going to create geometry for this portion of it. And so I'm going to go ahead and save this as a file first, though. So I'm going to save it, and we'll call it curve webbing 2-inch, and we'll save it over the top of that one. Now we're ready to, it's a real simple process to model. All we're going to do is do a sweep along these two references with a 2-inch circle. And so hold the shift key down and rotate this over so we can see it a little bit better. And I'm going to isolate this particular reference line here by hitting the tab key. Yeah, there we go. And I'm going to put in a reference point. Okay, and what that reference point is going to do, you need to make sure that it's on the line and it's referencing a plane on the line like it is right now, and not something else. Because if you don't, then this will not appear when we go to set this. Okay, so we set, you'll notice that this plane now is perpendicular to this line, and so that's where we want the circle to be set. And I'm just going to come in here and create a circle. So I'm going to snap to that point and go out here and make it 1 inch. And so now I have a 1-inch circle, and I'm going to click on modify to kind of end that and use the control key. I'm going to select this reference line there and control key this reference line here and this reference line here. And so we have a profile and a path, and if I click this, sure enough, Revit figured out that I wanted to sweep it. And so now I have that. Let's assume that we wanted to put this, have a material assigned to that. Since we're already in here, I'm going to select that geometry, and you'll see a material by category. Okay, and so I'm going to select that. And what I'd like to do is make this red. Okay, so I'm going to go in and type in red and see what kind of materials we have as red. I don't have any in my model, but down here I evidently got red in several things. There's a red color, and then I think there's a red aluminum down here. So I'm going to use the anodized aluminum. So I'm going to click the little up arrow here, add it to my library, and say apply. Okay. And now if I go in and look at my view here, let's set it to the size of that space. Into realistic, you'll see that it'll render as red. Yeah. Okay. So with that, I'm going to save it. I've already named it. And then I'm going to load it into my project. Overwrite the existing version. Then I'm going to take this surface right here. Okay. I'm going to select it. And instead of triangular bent, you'll notice that now there is a curved truss webbing 2-inch under the bent. Okay, that's got geometry in it. So there's a panel here now that has a geometry in it, and it's going to add that geometry for me. Okay, and so now I've got my cord, and so now I just have to go back through. I've already got that fixed, so I just have to create a pattern, a surface over here, and go through the same process and create my webbing for that. And let's go in here into realistic. Okay, and you can see I changed the material of these cords to red, and now this is red, and it's all looking good, and that's what I want. So that's a curved truss.